Good evening, everyone. This is the Hingham Selectmen's meeting for Thursday, June 4th, 2015. Calling the meeting to order. First item of business is questions from the public on items not on the agenda. All right. Doesn't seem to be anything there. So the next matter.
Oh, Paul, yes, we do have someone.
Hi.
You have to come up to the mic.
Would you be kind enough to come up to the microphone and identify yourself by name and address?
My name is Sharon James, and I live at 360 Main Street, which is beside the GAR Hall.
Okay.
So I noticed that there were some paint marks on the street. It said DPW, I think, and there were arrows. So I called and said, because I live next door and I'm nosy, I just wanted to know what was up. And I eventually got someone who said that the posts were going to be put in on either side and a chain with a lock was going to be put across the driveway. So that driveway, and it belongs to the GAR Hall, but I have no access to my backyard, and so I and the owner before me, Tom Tewitt, would go down the driveway. I actually came and tried to get an easement, but there was a deed restriction, I understand. Yeah. So I guess I'm just wondering why there would need to be a chain.
Paul?
I don't have an answer for that, but Mr. Alexiadis.
I've been working with Ms. James and with the folks at GR Hall for a number of years now. We did try to find an easement solution to this problem, and she has been utilizing the town's driveway to come around the backside of her house. Especially in the winter, it produces a problem because she can't park on the street where usually she would park. I know that she's discussed with the building inspector, commissioner, an opportunity of building a structure in a garage on the other side, a little longer of a process, and we went pretty hard at an easement issue to see if that would work, and it didn't for some legal reasons. So I have to look into what the chain is and what times it's going to be put there, etc. But you've been a good neighbor of the GR Hall, and the GR Hall, I think, feels the same way in that regard. So let's just give us a chance to look into it and get back to you on it.
Thanks so much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Welcome.
Good night.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. First item of business is a memorandum of agreement with the United States Coast Guard regarding enforcement of maritime safety and security. Ted or Betty, can you fill us in here? Is this something that we do annually, or?
This is a renewal of an agreement that was signed by Chief Carlson back in about 2006. There's a new chief at the Coast Guard area, and so they've decided that they should update their memorandums of agreement. So we sent it down to town council to take a look at it, and he agreed that it was in keeping with similar agreements of this type, and that the only requirement was that it be a sworn officer, and the harbor master is a sworn officer. So
I see he's a signatory to the agreement.
yes.
As well as the chief of police.
Correct. As well as yourself as chairman of the board.
Okay.
So we had council, Betty had council review it, as you can see on the front, the cover letter, and he was clear. The one thing he wanted to point out is that, the MOA does not provide for payment back and forth, which is one of the reasons we have MOAs, so that we don't charge the other town, they don't charge us or the other organization when we have to work together jointly on an activity.
This essentially what sets out the parameters of authority and responsibility when the Coast Guard and police are working in tandem.
Correct.
All right. Colleagues, Paul, do you have any questions?
Nope, all set.
All right, I'll entertain a motion then. One of you like to do that?
Move to sign a memorandum of agreement with the United States Coast Guard regarding enforcement of maritime safety and security.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I see that we have a member of the Country Club Committee here, so perhaps we can take this a little out of order. This is an employment agreement between the town and the Director of Operations at the South Shore Country Club, also known as James McGrail. Ted, can you fill us in on essentially what we're being asked to okay here? And
Sure. I met with Jay McGrail, the Director of Operations for the South Shore Country Club, and the Chairman of the Country Club Management Committee, Bill Friend, who's in the audience with us here today. And we negotiated the terms of the contract, which were consistent with his existing contract. One important thing that we were able to achieve here is that we, the vehicle that Mr. McGrail uses is a town-supplied vehicle, which is part of his original employment agreement. And keeping consistent with what we've tried to do in some areas, we're moving away from the use of town-owned vehicles for primarily a commuting type arrangement and using just a pure compensation method. So we calculated the value, and we provided in the employment agreement for an expense allowance to cover that cost. So there's no economic value change in the contract.
okay. Mary, do you have any questions?
No, I would just, I'm sorry Jay isn't here so that we couldn't take the opportunity to just publicly thank him for all the great work that he's done for the town. He does a terrific job, and we're very lucky to have him.
I just echo those thoughts. I mean, it speaks for itself. The people are very effusive with their praise of the operation up there, and that's a large part to do to him. So we're very happy with that.
Well, gentlemen, would you care to opine in any way, or would you simply echo?
I really came only to answer questions. Ted explained it very well. It's a renewal, and the only change to the agreement is what he mentioned, the switching from a purchase of an automobile to an allowance. And Jay's happy with the revisions, and we as a committee are happy with the 3-year renewal and agree that he's been doing a very good job for us, and we'd like to keep him for another 3 at a minimum.
Okay, well, great. Well, then, in that case, I'll entertain a motion. Mary, would you like
Sure.
to do this?
I'll make a motion to execute an employment contract between the town and the Director of Operations at the South Shore Country Club.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
we're running ahead a bit, so we're going to go to the town administrator agreement, and there's 2 votes here. I will tell the members of the public that we met in executive session last week, had productive discussion, and we've reached an agreement with Mr. Alexiadis. Betty, would you be kind enough just to take us through this briefly? And
Well, the first vote in front of you is to sign the third amendment to the existing contract, employment contract with Mr. Alexiadis.
okay.
And you have the amendment in your folder. Mr. Alexiadis's employment year ended on January 18th of 2015. And after that time, you have an evaluation process, and that's when the performance award is discussed. And because of some irregularities this year, so as far as you've had a change in the board and this process was not completed beforehand, it made it more difficult. So this just wraps the incentive into the pay for that period.
Okay. And just for the benefit of the folks at home, the contract envisions an evaluation. Because of what happened, we agreed that for this year only, we're going to forego that process. I will say to the public, having worked closely with Mr. Alexiadis in the course of last year, I was very satisfied with his efforts in behalf of the town. And I am satisfied that his work was superlative in nature. So what we're trying to do as an effort to move forward is to execute this amendment to the existing employment contract, and then execute a contract going forward, which will be effective on June 30th. So this is the first step. So I thought perhaps if I explain this, We will be waiving the evaluation process for this year only. We will agree to pay Mr. Alexiadis a compensation payment of $15,000 for the contract year that ended January 18, 2015. That is a part of a multi-year contract. And going forward, this so-called incentive payment will be deleted from the employment agreement, and that figure would be wrapped into the pay that he gets. Further, in order to add vitality to the evaluation process in the future, we're going to codify the practice that we have of having the Director of Human Resources schedule the evaluation process and related logistics so it will be timely completed. I'm not sure if there's anything more that I could add to that, but I'll invite my colleagues, if they so choose, to comment, to opine, or speak.
I didn't necessarily understand that we were going to comment on his job performance, and I think it's really important, and I know it wasn't intended that way, is for the people at home to understand that it wasn't a unanimous decision. And I think when you say we were going to give him a raise or vote to approve this amendment, I did not agree with it for a number of reasons, which I don't necessarily have to get into, but I just wanted to make sure that there were issues. I think I've registered that through my vote, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Gannon. Would you like to add anything?
I would just add that the one-time incentive payment was something that was instituted a few years ago. It is the only position in the town that has that had such a feature. To our knowledge, it was the only town administrator position in the Commonwealth that had it. I spoke with the Personnel Board because I felt that was a little bit of a different structure. From my experience in the corporate world, most incentives are tied to objective profitability results, things like profit or return on equity. I think that's more difficult to do in the municipal world. So to me, going back to the way we had it is more suitable in the municipal environment.
Okay. Yes, Carol.
I'm sorry, were you saying you don't agree, you don't think that there should be the incentive payment? Is that what you're saying? Or?
Correct.
And then, Paul, can you say a little more? I wasn't quite clear on why the evaluation process is being set aside. You said something about changing the selectmen, but what does that mean?
Well, there were a number of things. Essentially, the evaluation took place, and it had to take place in accordance with the terms of the contract. Fundamentally, however, it wasn't completed. It was still open at the time of the May 2nd election. There's a new board now. I don't want to get bogged down in going through what could take a great deal of time and energy. It's my own opinion. Mr. Gannon and I respectfully disagree. But I thought that Mr. Alexiadis' performance in the last year was, frankly, excellent. And I leave it to the people of the town to speak to me if they disagree, but that's how I viewed this, and I think that continuing to get into this would be problematic, and I think it would distract us from the more important matters, and that's addressing the town's business going forward. This is a time where we've spent a great deal of effort trying to clean things up, and I'll speak to that a little bit later on in the meeting, so that our plate and our vision is clear going forward. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to execute an amendment to the employment agreement between the town and the town administrator.
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I vote no.
Okay, and the next item of business would be to execute an employment agreement prospectively, which would begin on June 30th, 2015 to June 30th, 2018, which incorporates the provisions that we just spoke to. Is there any discussion on that?
I would just make the point that, similar to the contract that we just voted for the Director of Operations for the Country Club, this is also a 3-year contract at the same salary. So what that in effect means is that for the next 3 years, this will be set. As we look at our revenue projections and decelerating revenue growth, managing our personnel costs is going to continue to be challenging in the town. And so this, I think it's important to note that this salary is unchanged, and it will be unchanged for 3 years.
Right, Mary, and I don't think that this changes much of what I would say, but well, obviously for Ted's benefit, there's a cost of living adjustment each year.
Yes.
You don't want to forget that.
Yes, and there's a cost of living adjustment for every town employee that would...
Exactly.
Yes.
And I would only add that there is an evaluation process contained in it, and we will initiate that in a timely manner and make sure that it's complete. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to execute a successor employment agreement between the town and the town administrator.
So moved?
Second, all those in favor? Aye.
I vote no.
Thank you. Okay. And now we welcome Ms. Murphy. Please join us. Good timing.
Thank you.
Good evening, Susan. Should I say Ms. Murphy?
Either works.
You're here to inform, educate, and explain the Ridgewood Crossing Condominium Regulatory Agreement?
Yes, so
Yes.
in approximately 2016, a subdivision was approved for
2006?
Did I say 2000?
I know what you meant.
Back to the future.
Which one is that going to be?
I remember it.
In approximately 2006, what's called a flexible residential development subdivision was approved for the Ridgewood Crossing condominium. This was under a bylaw that allowed for the creation of some affordable housing units. So it's a project that will include 3 affordable housing units. It was new to the town at that time, and these units, since this isn't a traditional 40B development, are called local action units, and there's a procedure to it that was new to the town. There was some confusion at the time. The documents that were executed were not the documents that DHCD would have liked to have executed, and this came to light in the last year or so, and between conversations over the last year between the town, the housing authority, which is a kind of freestanding entity apart from the general town government, and DHCD, we were able to come up with an amended and restated regulatory agreement that will meet all of the requirements for DHCD regulations going forward and allow the last and the third and last unit, which is about almost completed, to be marketed properly and included on our subsidized housing inventory. So this agreement needs to be executed by the developer, Ridgewood Partners, by the Board of Selectmen, and by DHCD. And also, because the original agreement had the Housing Authority as a party, which was not standard, they're joining in to say that they're acknowledging that they are no longer going to be under this regulatory agreement, but they have a separate agreement with the developer with respect to marketing, which will stay in place. So the 2 steps are getting this agreement done and then having the marketing done on the new unit. So this is step 1 that we're asking the selectmen. I believe the developers already signed and delivered signature pages to Betty Foley. The selectmen hopefully will agree and sign tonight. And then the Housing Authority is meeting Tuesday night, and assuming they sign off on Tuesday night, it will go to DHCD, and we'll get this last unit marketed, sold, and on our inventory.
Thank you. Paul, do you have any questions?
Susan, I think I have the answer, but through that discussion, the folks at home, so is this the last unit?
I
gonna be
believe it's the
marketed?
last unit in the entire project, but it's also the last of the 3 affordable housing units.
Right.
That, for new sale. That this one is a brand-new one is just finished construction.
And for folks that may have interest, it's going to be marketed in the next month or?
I would
2
say
months?
it's the next couple of months. The next step is the Housing Authority is putting together an updated marketing plan because the marketing plan is now about 7 years old. The marketing plan needs to go to DHCD with a letter from the Board of Selectmen saying that the Board of Selectmen is comfortable with it. So the next step will be a draft coming into Town Hall, finding the appropriate town official to take a look at it, report to you, have you agree, and then it will go up. So that may take a few weeks. Once it goes up to DHCD and they approve it, then they can start marketing. So I'd hopefully by, midsummer, it will be marketed.
And I know I may be getting off the
Nope, that's okay.
purpose of it, but so folks at home understand.
Yeah.
Is there, the unit itself, do we know whether it's a two-bedroom, a 3, maybe?
It's an age restricted, so at least one of the occupants has to be 55 and over, and it's a 2-bedroom.
Were the other units the same? age
Yes,
restriction?
I believe all the units in the development are 2-bedroom, like 2-bathroom or 2.5 bathroom, something like that.
And is it maybe a uniform system? Is it a lottery of sorts, and then they look?
Yes, for the initial sale, there will be a lottery, and that will all be in the marketing plan that will be coming to the Board of Selectmen, so it will be discussed at another public meeting for the public to hear about.
Good, thank you.
So what's happening here is that in order for this unit to be counted in our affordable housing stock, we have to execute the process to comply with DHCD.
Right.
Which means the paperwork, the process.
Right.
So this is step 1, where we're all sort of signing the agreement.
Right.
Then before we go to market it, to Paul's point, we again have to submit the plan to DHCD,
Right.
which means that the marketing activity can't start until DHCD has approved it.
Right.
So I think it's important to understand that this is a process we need to follow that will help the town make sure that this unit gets counted in our affordable inventory. It's also important that all the players involved understand we kind of have to follow this lockstep
Right.
so that that happens.
Right. Right, and I would hope, just to get the marketing going, that there might be a plan in front of the, I don't know what your schedule is coming in June and July, but hopefully even by the end of this month, I would hope that there might be something up here for you to take a look at.
I would like to recognize that the chairman of the Housing Authority is present in the audience and thank him for attending tonight.
And I'd like to thank Susan for great attention to this detail. Because we are keeping the lottery function, giving up the modeling function. You made it very clear.
Yep.
Thanks. We'll be signing it Tuesday. And welcome.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I like it when a plan comes together. Can we have a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to sign an amended and restated regulatory agreement for the Ridgewood Crossing condominium.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Council.
Terrific, thank you.
Right. Okay. I guess at this point, we're going to have a discussion of goals and objectives process.
Okay, I had hoped to give you a summary of where you were on your goals and objectives from last year, but I was not able to. I was called into Boston today to speak on a legislative matter that took up too much of my time. I will have that for you for your next meeting, and at that point in time, I would recommend that the board consider how you want to go about setting goals for next year. A recommended process might be that you each, come forth with your goals, that we can talk about them on the 18th, and so everybody has them on the table, and then on the meeting of July 2nd, which will be your the meeting subsequent to that, you could vote your goals.
Comments from my colleagues?
I just, if we could, with the summary, if we could just have what the goals and objectives if we could maybe just print out what they were from last year.
Yeah, what I'm going to do is take each goal and then tell you where we are in each goal. I'm going to do
Great.
one per page.
That's what I thought, yeah,
So it's not too jumbled of a document.
okay.
I'm just, as someone who teaches people how to set goals and objectives, my 2 cents on this is, let's come up with a manageable set of goals. Let's not try to put 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag and set expectations with the community that, that in the next year we're going to do many, many things. I'd rather make substantive progress on 5 or 6 objectives than to have more than that are only partially completed. And I guess to that end, the other place, Ted and Betty, where I'd ask for your help is, with a lot of these objectives, it's our municipal staff that's playing an important role. So I think what would be helpful to all of us is to know what's the capacity. So, as we're looking forward, if there's, if there's an objective that's continuing, for example, a lot of the opiate and substance abuse work that's been done, what sort of resources will that require? And then sort of what are the trade-offs? I think that'll just be helpful in informing our decisions.
From our perspective, every selectman we've ever met always has their own objectives as the things they want to do, besides the running of the business of the town, which is your basic core business. And I think it's worthwhile incorporating that in your goals so that all of you know how each of you are allocating the resources through your own objectives, so that we don't wind up working to cross purposes. So I think it's a great idea. And I would wholeheartedly endorse the manageable goals, because unexpected things that are beyond our reach. I do hold the philosophy of trying to set a goal just a little beyond your grasp so you can stretch a little bit, but you don't want to be careful not to suggest to people that we're going to do 20 things and then we don't get to half of them and then open ourselves up to criticism. Probably should have known ahead of time that we, what the limits of our capabilities are.
And certainly with what town meeting has approved this year, for example, all the great work at the harbor, the fire station building committee, I think there are some things that town meeting has already in some ways kind of given us a little bit of direction as to some of their expectations. And I think particularly with the harbor, there's going to be considerable time and resources devoted to that.
And I was actually thinking that myself in terms of the harbor and Summer Street, and there's a bunch of issues. And, I think maybe last year, to a certain extent, sometimes we were trying to combine some of them, and maybe we should in some cases, and maybe we shouldn't in others. We have to be picky about it and be realistic, and so look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, I would only add that I want to make sure that we have a clear distinction between strategy and tactics. I do think less is more in this area, because having seen it both ways, it's frustrating when you take on more than you can handle. The only other thing I want to add is I want to get this done. I want to have this clearly in place within a couple of weeks, so that we can go forward with a clear understanding and consensus of what we're going to be doing, so that we can put our creative juices into accomplishing that.
That will also be timely, because as town committees and boards are forming, as they're looking at their agenda for the year, it's a great place to sort of align all the different resources and priorities.
And I will be conducting department head evaluations and setting up goals and objectives for them as soon as you finish. And that would be a better practice for us, because that way I can tie their goals to the goals that the board has set for the town.
Great.
I just throw one more thing out on this. I think if we want to set these at the beginning of July, which I think would be great to do, I think that as a board, we should give ourselves permission to, in October, November, if we need to revisit, if we need to modify, things will come up that we don't expect. And so I think we should consider that a document to set our path during the year, but it's not etched in stone in July 2nd. And that may also help us come to consensus.
That's a good point, because we don't know what the next few months are going to hold, and we should have some flexibility.
Yeah.
I agree.
Something may come up that requires our concerted effort. So, great. Anything else you want to add, Ted?
Not on goals and objectives. As you know, I'm going to be going to the advisory committee meeting in a few minutes. I don't know if you wanted to go into town administrator reports. I would just give you one brief one. Sure. I can't get too detailed into it because we'll discuss it in the executive session at a later point in time, but I thought it'd be worthwhile letting you know that we're making progress on the lease for Lincoln Maritime. Attorney Murphy indicates to me that she expects to be done with her draft of it by the end of this week, and we'll be meeting with opposing counsel and discussing it with them, and then ultimately I'll meet with Lincoln Maritime representatives and then come back to you with some of the parameters of what we discussed. But making good progress, and I wanted to mention that because I saw in the paper today an advertisement for an event coming up at Lincoln Maritime, and I know that they're very concerned about, wanting to leverage the good news that came out of town meeting to that event, and so I figured I'd let you guys know, without getting into the details of a negotiation and a public meeting, that we're making good progress.
Good, thank you. Betty, is there anything you'd like to?
I have nothing to add.
Turn to my colleagues.
Well, I have a couple things I didn't know. First of all, I want to thank everybody, and I'll start with the school department that was part of the whole senior week or 2 week or 3 weeks to the graduation. My daughter graduated, a number of other colleagues in government, children graduated, and it wasn't to no surprise that Paula Gerard McCann and Dot and the whole administration just did a fabulous job. It was very, very exciting for me to be there, but it was also, there were folks that happened to be going by that noticed it, and they were just very much impressed at the way it was conducted, and I think everybody who attended would have been very happy. I will tell you that I had the pleasure of being involved on Friday evening in the setup of the cafeteria, where I think it was a Survivor type theme, and boy, did they knock it out of the park. I tell you, Sherry Shilb is somebody who invited myself and my wife, and I was able to go the next night as well after the graduation, and Tara Redmond, and there were a number of people that put this together. It was just a classy affair. I was getting email after email after email singing the praises of the people that were involved in it. It just was so well done, and they do it for months and months and months, and people don't realize the effort that's put into this thing. And so all those folks, and if I've left anybody out, I will bring it up next week or 2 weeks, because they really do deserve the credit, everybody that participated in it. But I will go one step further, and the night, graduation night, it was great. I've done it before, but to see the kids, kind of like the last hurrah, they're together again, maybe for the last time, hopefully not, but certainly not as a group like that, and to just see them just enjoy themselves. It was heartwarming to see it, and I don't think they understand at the time, but I think the parents do. There were many, many parents that volunteered. How important, if you could take a snapshot in time, just to see these kids having so much fun together. It really was great, and so the whole process was great. I'm just so happy, and it's no surprise in this town because people step up to the plate time after time after time to do good things for not only the kids but for the town, and couldn't have been happier. And the only other thing I can really say is I'm just rooting on the sports teams. I know that baseball was in it. Girls and boys lacrosse won their games. They're in the States. There was conversation about how many state titles we had this year. I believe it was 5, and we're counting. And it's just been a great year to be part of the school environment, and we're really thankful to everybody that makes it work.
Thank you. Mary, would you like to-
Yeah, two things. Last Thursday, I had the opportunity to attend the closing arguments for the Aquarian trial. And, we haven't heard about Aquarian in a little while, but the trial actually concluded in Suffolk Business Court last Thursday, and a number of people were there from the town. And Ted, I believe you attended every day of the trial. And just to let the audience know, the case is now in the judge's hands, and the judge is going to be ruling. We're not exactly sure when, but probably sometime this summer, we will get an indication. And what the judge told the way that the judge's ruling is going to be presented, the judge is actually going to rule and give us a formula, and the attorneys for both sides will then be able to apply that formula to determine a purchase price. And so that's how this will proceed. Again, sometime this summer. We don't always get an indication as to when it may be coming. The other thing I would just add, prior to this meeting, I had the pleasure of speaking at a Girl Scout bridging ceremony where a lot of the Girl Scout troops in Hingham came together. So I appreciate the invitation, and I would like to acknowledge that in the town of Hingham this year, we have 5 young men who have already attained the rank of Eagle Scout, and I believe there is a 6th that is happening later this year. That's really impressive when you consider that 2% of Boy Scouts nationally make the ranks of Eagle, and here in Hingham our numbers are much higher. So congratulations to those Scouts, to their families, and thank you to all the volunteers who participate as Scout leaders.
Thank you. I had the pleasure of attending the high school graduation, and my congratulations to you, Paul, for the graduation of your daughter. It was nice to see. And as you said, a number of the school committee folks had children graduating, so it's just good. I mean, my own children went through there as well, and it's undeniably a very happy moment. And the very next day, I had the pleasure of seeing Mr. Gannon live at the Breakfast for Steve Lynch. So we represented Hingham, and that was a happy time, too. Congressman Lynch he works in Washington, but he's connected here locally, and I felt that there was a genuine responsiveness, which, as a selectman and as a citizen, as a voter, it was good to see. The only other thing that I can say on a personal note, I received a very nice letter today from General Joseph Dunford, who is he's in the Marine Corps, and it tells me that the military connection to the community is alive and well. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a vote to adjourn, because we're going to go into executive session, and I'll entertain a motion. But before I do that, I want to let the public know that we took a number of votes to release minutes of executive sessions that have been held in the last couple of years, and a number of those were voted to approve as well as release. Obviously, we're not going to release anything that's still live with respect to personnel or real estate negotiations, but as I said earlier in the meeting, we're trying to clean up things so we can move forward, put stuff in the rearview mirror that's appropriately belonging there, with an effort towards good government, transparency, and just keeping everybody informed. So on that note, I'll entertain a motion that we go in a joint session with the Advisory Committee and the Water Company Acquisition Study Committee to discuss strategy with regard to litigation, because discussion in open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating posture of the town. We will not be returning to open session.
So moved.
Second? Okay, roll call.
Are you okay?
Yes.
Because it's also general litigation, too.
It just
said
said
litigation.
It just says litigation.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Good night.
You guys are here. They're coming over here.